You know the stories, a whole nation of fierce independent women living on the edge of the known world. They were masters of the bow and the horse, and they went toe-to-toe with the greatest heroes of Greek mythology. They are the Amazons. For centuries, most of us figured that's all they were, a myth, a wild fantasy cooked up by the ancient Greeks, maybe as a kind of boogeyman story, a cautionary tale to warn what happens when women step out of their place in a man's world. But what if the myth isn't the whole story? What if the line between fact and fiction is a lot blurrier than we ever imagined? Welcome to Fact or Fiction Friday, where we're about to dive into a historical detective story, thousands of years in the making. The evidence is like a treasure map, buried for centuries, pointing to a truth that's even more incredible than the legend itself. For as long as we've told their stories, we've gotten the Amazons wrong. What if I told you that one of the most famous facts about them, that they lopped off a breast to get a better bow shot, is a total lie? And what if the real story is less like a comic book superhero and more like the incredible biography of a real-life Special Forces soldier? Join us as we dig for an answer to one of history's most enduring questions. Were the Amazon warrior women fact, or were they fiction? To understand where the truth lies, we first have to go to the land of stories, ancient Greece. To the Greeks, the Amazons were absolutely real. They were the daughters of Ares, the god of war, a scary, powerful society of women living near the Black Sea. Their whole world was a mirror image of Greece, in a society where most women's lives were confined to the home. The Amazons were out hunting, raiding, and fighting. Their legends are tangled up in the biggest Greek stories. The mighty Heracles, for his ninth labour, was sent to steal the golden girdle of the Amazon queen Hippolyta. This wasn't a simple snatch and grab. Think of it as a mythical mission impossible. A quest that proved just how fearsome the Amazons were. In some versions of the tale, Heracles even has to rally Greece's best heroes, like King Theseus of Athens, just to face the queen. And the Amazons didn't just fight heroes. They fought in the greatest war of the mythical age, the Trojan War. After Troy's champion Hector fell, a new army arrived to save the city, led by the Amazon queen Penthesilea. She was such a skilled warrior that she terrified the Greeks, cutting a path of destruction across the battlefield. It was only when she came up against Achilles, the best of the Greeks, that her rampage finally ended. But as he struck the final blow and took off her helmet, Achilles supposedly fell in love with the fierce, beautiful queen he'd just killed. These weren't just campfire tales. They were everywhere in ancient Greece. They were painted on hundreds of surviving vases and carved into the stone of their most sacred buildings, like the Pantheon. For the patriarchal Greek mind, which had very strict rules for men and women, hearing about the Amazons was like a zoologist hearing about a fish that could walk on land. It was both terrifying and fascinating. They were the measuring stick for greatness. If a hero could beat an Amazon, he was the real deal. But for all the Greek certainty, in the centuries that followed, the Amazons were tossed into the bin of fantasy. Historians looked at the stories and saw metaphor, not history. It was like reading one of Aesop's fables. They assumed the Amazons weren't real people, but characters meant to teach a lesson. Even ancient writers tried to explain it away. One back in the 4th century BCE suggested the Amazons were probably just foreign men who shaved their beards and wore strange clothes. This skepticism stuck around for thousands of years. The leading theory became that the Amazons were a useful fiction. It was like a social ghost story, a story Greek men told to show the chaos that would erupt if women didn't stick to their traditional roles. By making the Amazons so tough, the Greeks made the heroes who beat them look even more glorious. Besides, there was zero physical proof. No one had found the lost city of Themyscira. No one had dug up graves filled with female skeletons buried with swords and spears. Without hard evidence, the Amazons stayed firmly in the category of fiction, no more real than a minotaur. For a long time, it seemed the case was closed. The Amazon warriors were just a great story. So if these were just tall tales meant to make heroes look good and keep society in order, how do we explain what archaeologists started finding? How do we explain the discoveries from the windswept grasslands of Eurasia that forced us to reopen this cold case and question everything we thought we knew? The first real clues didn't pop up in Greece, but way out in the vast steppes of what is now Russia and Ukraine. Archaeologists were excavating ancient burial mounds called kurgans that belongs to the nomadic peoples the Greeks called the Scythians. These were horse-riding cultures that thrived at the exact same time the Amazon myths were popular in Greece. At first, digs turned up what everyone expected: graves of powerful male warriors buried with their swords, daggers and armour. But then, they started finding anomalies. It was like putting together a jigsaw puzzle and suddenly finding pieces that didn't seem to belong to the picture on the box. Graves were filled with the complete kit of a warrior: spears, axes, bows and dozens of arrows. But when forensic anthropologists looked at the bones, they got a shock. These weren't men, they were women. The evidence just kept piling up. As more graves were unearthed, a stunning pattern emerged. Adrian Mayer, a leading expert in the topic, points out that about a third of the Scythian women's graves found so far contain weapons, and many of the skeletons have battle wounds. To put that in perspective, imagine looking at old portraits from a historical village and realising that in 1 out of every 3 pictures, the woman is holding a spear. These weren't just for show. These women were fighters. Then, in late 2019, a discovery in western Russia blew the case wide open. At a site called Devitsa, archaeologists found a tomb with 4 female warriors buried together. They spanned generations: a girl as young as 12 or 13, 2 women in their 20s, and a leader between 45 and 50. Finding a warrior so young with seasoned veterans suggested that for these people, fighting wasn't an odd job for women. It was a way of life. It was like a family business where the skills of the trade, in this case battle, were passed down from one generation to the next, starting in childhood. The details are incredible. One woman was buried in the position of a horseman, as if she were forever riding. The oldest woman, a respected elder, wore a spectacular golden headdress, a clear sign of her high status. The tomb was packed with over 30 iron arrowheads, knives, and horse harnesses. The lead archaeologist said the finds confirmed that Amazons were a common Scythian phenomenon, and that these women got the same honours in death as the men. The hard evidence is like a Rosetta Stone for the Greek myths. Suddenly, the old stories don't sound so crazy. Let's rewind to the historian Herodotus, the father of history. Around 440 BCE, he wrote a detailed story about a band of Amazons captured by Greeks, who then hijacked their ship and crash-landed in Scythian territory. According to Herodotus, the Scythian men first fought these invaders, but after realising they were women, decided to woo them instead. Eventually, they joined forces, but the women refused to settle down and live like other Scythian women. They told the men, "We can't live with your women. We don't have the same customs." We shoot bows, throw javelins, and ride horses. Your women do none of that. So they formed a new tribe, the Soromatians, where Herodotus says women continue to hunt and go to war right alongside the men. For centuries, this was written off as just another legend, but the archaeology lines up perfectly. It's like finding two halves of a torn photograph, separated for centuries, and then realising they form a single, clear image. Places Herodotus described are exactly where these graves of warrior women are being found. The lifestyle he detailed, women on horseback, deadly with a bow, matches the evidence from the burials. It seems Herodotus wasn't just spinning a yarn. He was actually reporting on the real nomadic culture of the edge of the world. Even the name the Greeks had for their Amazons started to make sense. They likely heard stories about these powerful independent women and saw them through their own cultural lens, which, in this case, acted like a funhouse mirror, distorting the real image into the exaggerated mythical race of man-hating warriors. That whole myth about them cutting off one breast is now believed to be a Greek invention, born from a misunderstanding of the name Amazon. There isn't a single piece of ancient art or any skeletal evidence to back it up. So, after digging through all the evidence, from ancient myths to actual bones, what's the final call? Were the Amazons fact or fiction? The truth is, it's not a simple yes or no. The answer isn't a switch that's either on or off. It's more like a dimmer dial, blending from pure fiction into hard fact. If by Amazons you mean a nation of only women who lived in total isolation and hated all men, then no, that's probably fiction. That fantasy was almost certainly a product of Greek fascination and fear, not reality. But if we ask the right question, were there real-life warrior women on the Eurasian steppes who were expert riders and archers, who fought and died in battle, and who were so fierce they inspired the Greek myths? Then the answer is a resounding evidence-based yes. The Scythian warrior women were real. The archaeology is undeniable. For centuries, we had the myth without the proof. Now we have the proof, and we can finally see how the Greeks encountered these formidable, real-life women and spun their stories into the larger-than-life legend of the Amazons. It's like finding out your favourite superhero from the comics was actually based on a real person with a real documented history. The core of the myth, the powerful horse-riding warrior woman, wasn't a fantasy. She was a historical fact. The story of the Amazons proves that sometimes a kernel of truth is hiding inside the myths we've always been told. The line between history and legend isn't always so clear. Sometimes it's more like a coastline, where the water of myths and the sand of fact are constantly mixing. What do you think? Does this evidence change how you see Greek mythology? And what other myths do you think could be based on a hidden reality? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe and ring the notification bell so you don't miss the next Fact or Fiction Friday. The Amazon warrior is a figure that has stood the test of time, from the pottery of ancient Athens to the comic books and movies of today. For so long, we saw her as pure imagination, but now we know she was a real, flesh and blood woman of the steppes. She lived, she rode, she fought, and she was buried with the full honours of a warrior. Discovering that these women were real doesn't diminish the myth, it makes it better. It's like discovering that a breathtaking castle in a painting is a real place you can visit. It grounds the legend in a history that is just as epic, and it reminds us that the most incredible stories are often the true ones, just waiting to be unearthed.